Hello everyone. Welcome to the Scorpio season forecast. I am really excited about this season. I love Scorpio season, and so I'm really pumped to share with you some of the astrology that's coming up this season. So for this workshop, as always, I'm going to be sharing about the kind of major planetary transits that are happening and explaining a bit about how those energies are going to work and what that looks like for you. And then I'll finish up with a general tarot reading, just a single card for the collective. So that's what's coming up. I'm Jenny Fitter, and we're just going to jump right in. Of course, if you see my eyes shooting to one side, that's because this is where my notes are on the side, so don't mind that. Also, I'm filming this video in my living room, and my parrot is like tucked away kind of napping in the corner, so if he wakes up and starts like screaming and screeching, it's a bird. It's not a dinosaur, though it sounds like it, so hopefully he'll be sleeping for this video. So anyway, let's talk about Scorpio season. Scorpio season. Scorpio is a fixed water sign, so it's a feminine energy, and it's very much about in the watery realms of emotions, but being that fixed kind of deeper, heavier energy, it's kind of a lot of those like deeply entrenched emotions that we have, rather than the ones that kind of blow through, kind of just how we're feeling day to day. Scorpio season is really these like deep kind of foundational emotions that can both be kind of like the emotions that really drive us and fuel us in a very positive way, like the heavy emotions that are attached to our values and the things that we really that aren't negotiable for us. And it can also be kind of, that's kind of a more of a positive aspect. It can also be the heavy emotions that we have attached to us because of certain events, certain traumas, certain experiences, where those emotions stay, like they kind of sink down to the bottom of us and stay where it's a lot harder to clear them out. So these the like heavy fixed nature of the Scorpio water signs are those emotions that they become a really deep part of us. Sometimes we don't even really know that they're there, but they are kind of fueling our experiences day to day. And sometimes they can like come up in a bigger way, and we experience a big wave of intensity, whether that emotion is what we experience as a positive emotion of deep passion or intense joy or like really, really focused energy, or it can be something that feels like trauma that comes up that's really frightening, that's really gets your nervous system going. All of that is scorpionic emotions, and one of the key words for Scorpio is intensity. But it's not just intensity, it's also passion. So both of those go together. Scorpio feels like the extreme ends of our emotional experiences as humans, so both the extreme passions and the things that like light us up and fuel us for a really long time, as well as those things that we tend to really want to run away from because they're really scary and intense. So that's kind of the emotional quality of Scorpio season. Scorpio season is also, because there's so much of that energy of what's the deep down under, Scorpio season is very much about plunging the depths of things and bringing it up to the surface to be seen and experienced. So in Scorpio season, it's kind of like anything that's been swept under the rug for a while is probably going to start to come out now. Whether that is things that you've been meaning to get to, things that you've been trying to repress, things that you've been like, no, I view myself as this way and I have a sense of identity here and I don't include some of these other parts. I don't want to look at them. Those might start to kind of come up a little bit more. So whatever's been hidden, this is now a really great time to start to work with it and bring it up. It's a great thing to do intentionally, because what often happens is it's going to come up anyway, either way, whether you want it to or not. So to be facing it and prepared and welcoming it up, it's much less of a yicky process. So Scorpio season gets a really bad rap for being really intense, for being like this roller coaster. It's so scary and heavy, but a lot of that just comes from the resistance to that which is kind of buried away, the resistance to seeing what's really up there, and the resistance to extremes. A lot of the time we like to kind of sit in this moderate zone, nothing too crazy, nothing too sad, and kind of flow in that easy space. Scorpio season just really increases the bandwidth for the peaks and the lows, and that can feel like, whoa, really kind of yo-yo like. So that in and of itself, even if that includes really high exciting times, just that whiplash, some people can get a little overwhelmed with that. But that's nothing to be afraid of. That's a neutral experience. It's just increasing the bandwidth. The peaks are as high as the lows with Scorpio season, or at least that potential. So if we limit ourselves from ever feeling the lows, we also limit ourselves from feeling the high bandwidth, and that's just sort of something about Scorpio season. So I really enjoy kind of digging into those things. So that this is kind of my take on it. So that's some of the just general Scorpio themes that we'll be dealing with. So the sun is going to be entering into Scorpio season. All of these times that I'm going to be saying is Pacific time, where I am on the west coast of Canada. So it's going to be the wee hours of October 23rd is when the sun's just coming into Scorpio season. So that's when the sun moves into a certain sign. The sun is this bright light in the solar system, right? So when the sun is moving, it's shining a light on this particular area. So the sun moving from Libra season is taking the light off of Libra themes and suddenly shining the spotlight on Scorpio, which is always an interesting thing, because if Scorpio is those dark, heavy depths, we're turning on a giant flashlight and saying, hey, what's in there? What's down there? So it might feel, blaring things, like if you've mostly been letting those things stay in the dark, like that kind of intensity of the light can feel a bit jarring, but that's just part of what the season is, and there's lots of really great things that you may not have realized you lost in some of those dark places. So, sweeping under the rug there's all kinds of things that are stuck there. So this is an opportunity to come and rescue a lot of those things. So sun moving into Scorpio on October 23rd, we're going to be feeling kind of more of these intensities as well. So this, for you and for others around you, that might mean that you're going to be feeling these more volatile emotions. Scorpio season has a rap for the energies of being like possessive and jealous. So that's definitely one of the more unhealthier versions of Scorpio. So you might find those kind of elements coming up for you if you're like really kind of more aware of the things that you have or the things that you want or that other people have. But there's always a light side to the dark. So when we're looking at jealousy or possessiveness, what that's really about is resources. It's, do I have what I need? Do other people have what I need? Are things being fair? Is the distribution of what our resources are, is it adequate? A lot of the time when we are jealous, it's this kind of fear or envy that I don't have enough, and so I want what you have. So really, instead of focusing on that feeling of, oh, what do you have? I want it. What that really might be pointing to is, do I really feel like I have enough of what I need? Do I feel like my contributions aren't being valued, and so I'm jealous of other people? Am I just really worried or nervous about my own finances or my own resources? And that focus then means that turns you able to better look at the real root problem instead of projecting it out and getting nasty at other people. So, but rather than saying, oh, I'm feeling jealous or kind of yucky, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, and taking it and repressing it, well, this is the time where those things that we repress, especially those parts of our identity that we maybe don't like those yucky feelings of jealousy or anger or possessiveness, a lot of us dissociate ourselves from those emotions, and we think, that's not me, that's not the real me, squash it down, instead of allowing those parts of us to be a part of us, to allow those emotions to have something to tell us. And instead of gaslighting them and trying to throw them away, they're going to keep coming up, especially in this season where we're shining a light on those things, and instead asking those emotions those important questions. What are you really telling me? What are you telling me about what I'm afraid of? What are you telling me about my needs? And then that's so much more of a rich way to make that discovery about yourself, and then actually heal that cycle, because those emotions will keep coming up if you don't find what the root source is. So, and then trying to be a little bit graceful with other people who might be sending those emotions your way as well. If people are getting possessive or angry or jealous or fearful, and they're kind of spewing it out that way, try to realize for yourself that maybe this isn't about you. It's about their experience and their fears and their dredging up of what maybe has been repressed for them, and try to, make sure that you're safe, have your boundaries, and only engage to how much you're willing, but try not to let that seep into your sense of self. It's it's their journey just like yours is your own. So that's just some of the general things that might be coming up for this once the sun moves into Scorpio. The next transit that we have, I'm just going to touch on it briefly. It's Jupiter, who is currently in, or has been in, Aries and has been retrograding, so going backwards through Aries. The retrograde is going to cross over into Pisces season on October 27th. So Jupiter is crossing back over that line and going back into Pisces. So Jupiter as a planet is very much about our expansion and also kind of like the things that um, it's the planet of Jupiter is associated with luck, is associated with like that big sort of, oh my god, I was so fortunate that happened, I don't feel like I did anything or deserved it, but I received this kind of big blessing and it was really, really helpful. That's kind of the energy of Jupiter, is this expansive wellness, but it's also just expansion itself. So whatever you're dealing with and wherever Jupiter is, it's about expansion. So Jupiter has been in Aries. Aries has been a fire sign. It's like new ideas, fresh new life. So we may have been kind of feeling like, ooh, this expansion of our ideas, or desire to initiate something. And now Jupiter moving back into Pisces. Pisces is the sign of the dream world and all about illusions and possibilities and going beyond our actual physical, tangible reality into the other levels of reality that are beyond what we can see and taste and touch. So Jupiter, it's already this planet of expansion, is traveling backwards into this sign of this dream and kind of open possibility. So we're kind of getting this little extra chance to like expand our dreams and focus again. Jupiter had already gone through Pisces, so we'd had this sort of expanding vision, these dreams, things that we could maybe haven't manifested yet, but we're seeing as maybe possible in the dream world. And then we moved into Aries, which was like, maybe let's get things going. Let's start to add a little fire spark to it. And we're kind of getting like this chance to reevaluate those things that we were dreaming before, to say, like, maybe have we learned a few things already? Do we want to adjust the dream? Do we want to dream bigger because Jupiter is having this opportunity for more expansion? It's like, yeah, you had a really great idea, but do you want to do it bigger? How about more? You know what? Maybe this could include even more people. Maybe even more people could benefit from this. Let's dream a little bit bigger. It's not necessarily about action, because of course a retrograde planet energy is more about reflecting and it's more inward energy. It's less about going out and doing, and it's more about thinking and reassessing and like just kind of getting your ducks in a row before going forward again. So Jupiter retrograding back into Pisces is really like rethinking these dreams and allowing them to percolate a little bit more before Jupiter will go direct again. So that's going to be what's happening on October the 27th. Next transit, we have October 29th. This is Mercury, that planet of thought and communication, is going to be entering into Scorpio season, following closely after the sun. Okay, so all of those Scorpio themes of intensity and that which is kind of hidden and bringing back to life, all of that's going to be applicable, but in the planet of our thoughts and our minds. So now we're going to be thinking about these things a lot more. So whereas before it might just be like, oh, we're just starting to feel, or just this kind of vague sense of like turning the light on to things that we haven't really dealt with, Mercury is now really going to give us a chance to actually be cognitive about it, bring it into our awareness and our daily, which is a really, really excellent opportunity to not just be drowning in those feelings of like, things are coming up, but I don't really know what to do about it because it's hard to really think about it. Mercury is now going to say, okay, let's think about it. Let's talk about it. This is a really excellent time to be sharing. If you have friends or family that you trust, or loved ones, or counselors or therapists, Mercury in Scorpio is like, let's talk about our trauma. Let's talk about what's been repressed. Let's think about why we feel this way. Let's go back in our minds and think, how did it even start this way? Bringing those cognitive questions to this less cognitive process of this kind of deeper emotional kind of stuffed down space, allowing it to flow back up and maybe transmute it a little bit. So the kind of flip side here is that this Mercury is also about our word, our spoken word as well, is we might be kind of, if we're feeling those heavy Scorpio emotions, we might be quicker to speak to them and act on them, which can be a downside. So this is, you want to be careful to make sure that your speech and how you're communicating with people is productive, and not just spewing those emotions at them and getting mad at people or accusing them And we want our ability to speak to our feelings to be from compassion and safety, and also consent. If you're going to talk to somebody about your trauma, or about things that have bothered you, or about things that hurt you, then you really need to make sure that they're on board with the conversation. You don't just come up and spew it at them and make it their problem, especially because if they're not prepared or able to hold you in that space, it might not be safe for you either. They might react to you. They might get triggered. They might get upset at you. And now then you're just going to want to hide back away as you kind of prove to yourself that, oh, I can't share these things. It's not safe. Well, that safety, environment of safety, is part of your responsibility as well, to make sure that you're finding the right time and the context and consent safe space in order to communicate these things. Because you don't want to trigger somebody else either. We don't want to just kind of bounce our traumas back and forth, which is part of what this season can feel like if we're not careful, if we don't slow down, and if we aren't, aware with compassion and grace for ourselves and what other people are going through. So that's some things for Mercury going into Scorpio. Really excellent time to be able to bring motion and cognitive thought to these deep emotions. We just want to make sure we do it in a safe and respectful way to everybody. So the next transit is right afterwards. October the 30th is Mars. The planet Mars is currently in Gemini. It's about to go retrograde. So October 30th, Mars has been slowing down, and now he's going retrograde in Gemini. So the planet Mars is this planet of action. It's a very kind of masculine energy, and by masculine, I'm not talking about gender. I'm talking about the focus of energy. So the masculine energy is an outward directed force. It's going and creating in the world, and it's outward directed, and it's a little bit more linear. So it's about taking action and initiation. Mars is also kind of like our inner warrior, so what we stand for and what we're willing to fight for and against. So that it can be this warrior of going out and achieving. It can also be this staunch defender to defend what it is that you care for. So Mars in Gemini, Mars is this martial and directed force, and Gemini is this planet of kind of lightness, fun, spontaneity, language, kind of not being bogged down in any one thing, but like trying a bunch of different things, beginner's mindset. It's very kind of floaty. So it's an interesting combo with Mars anyway, because Mars is more directed, but Gemini wants to do multiple things. So Mars in Gemini is probably wanting to start a bunch of different projects, doing a bit of this, doing a bit of that, initiating more and more things, or initiating a new kind of education or a new thing that you want to learn. Gemini loves to learn, and Mars is initiating and acting on that. So Mars has been in Gemini for a little while, so we may have had more of an interest in picking up new things or starting to learn or go for new things. Now that we're going retrograde, so again, retrograde energy is always, it's moving from a direct action into a more receptive, restful, reflective state, and wanting to slow down and kind of, turn inward, but instead of being outward. So when Mars goes retrograde, that's already can feel a little weird, because Mars wants to do, and retrograde's like, okay, but let's think about it. We can still do, but we want to be a little less linear about it, and be kind of going on that spiral and looping back, so that when we come forward again, we've gained a little bit more momentum. So Mars going retrograde in Gemini, you might feel but I want to move forward, but now I gotta go back. And so what that might look like, because Gemini already likes to jump between things, is it might feel like you're just circling through things. I want to do this, but now I'm bored. I want to do this. So what about this? This doesn't interest me. I feel like I can't get forward on this. I was working on this, but now it doesn't feel like I can make momentum. I'll just go back to this. So it might feel a little like, I can't focus on any one thing. But actually, that can be really distressing if your goal is to make a lot of forward motion. If you're still thinking in a direct Martian way, which is, I'm going that way and I want to see my progress as I go. If that's what you're still wanting, then this retrograde can feel distressing, because you're like, I just can't get forward. But if you can accept that that's what retrograde energy is, and that's what it's about, you can think of, actually, maybe this is a great time to be taking stock of all of the variety of things that are happening in my life. Instead of trying to get forward momentum on everything, which already is a lot if you're juggling a lot of Gemini balls, like you can only go forward so many times if you're doing so many things. So it's a better kind of way to be thinking, okay, if I want to be able to take continued action in these areas of my life, what does each area need from me now in order to be able to do that in the future when Mars goes direct? So like, do all of my projects have the right resources? Do I have enough money for that project? Did I just commit to something because I was really excited about it, but I realized I don't know that I have the time for that? Is this something that I've been putting off and now it's actually really draining me and I just need to finish that up so I can put it away? Really taking stock of all of the different areas in your life and then making sure that you've got everything that you need in all of them. So that's a really awesome thing to be doing in retrograde. Retrogrades also, because we're in this more slower energy, that invitation is to like slow down a little bit. If we don't, and if we just kind of rush forward and punch through, especially Mars energy is like, oh, I'll just go for it anyway, things can get a little bit fractious. And because Mars is also this like planet of kind of warfare and aggression, is you can kind of like be getting a little like aggro if you're not like in that restful state, or other people might be trying to punch through that retrograde energy and it can get kind of combative. But because Gemini is a verbal mental sign, what that may look like is verbal fighting, where you're really angry and so instead you get into arguments, you get really rude. Gemini can be very sarcastic and witty, but when that's aggravated in a Martian way, that can be being really mean with your words, being unnecessarily jabby. So try to be aware of that. Try to see if that's necessary. Mars is also rules inflammation and injury. So Mars in retrograde, there might be if you're not honoring that slowdown, you might kind of make mistakes and injure yourself. And Gemini rules the arms and the hands and shoulders, as well as the nerves in the body. So this is a really great time to just be aware and be thinking safety conscious of your hands and your arms and shoulders and nerves, making sure that you're not trying to push through anything if you have injuries there, or it might be a great time to be thinking of rehabilitation so that we're not hurting ourselves and causing accidents. So that is Mars retrograding in Gemini, October 30th. That one's particularly potent for me because I've been dealing with a lot of shoulder and nerve issues in my arms. So I've been really working on rehabilitation, and I'm going to be taking extra care to make sure that I'm focusing and not pushing through that area because I don't want to re-injure myself. I want to get better. So that's Mars in retrograde. Next, we have November 15th. We have Venus. The planet Venus is going to be entering Sagittarius. So Venus is in Scorpio right now. So we've already been getting a taste of Scorpio season. Venus moved into Scorpio just before the sun did. So Venus is this planet of relationships and values and love and that which kinds of brings us pleasure. And so we've been getting pleasure, or we're focusing our values on those scorpionic themes. So that can mean really like feeling the pleasure that can come from those emotional intensities. There's a really, and it can be weird to think that you can feel pleasure in low emotion. And pleasure is maybe not the right word in that case, but value. And pleasure doesn't always feel good. Pleasure in the meta sense, like there's just, oh yeah, it feels nice in a light way, but we can feel like that sense of rightness, or that really connection to this is part of what being a human is. When you're in really deep grief, that can, if that's what's right in that time, if what you're really experiencing is deep sorrow, then being able to be in that is actually something that's really nourishing. What can happen a lot of the time is we experience, or we want to experience, these heavy emotions, and we don't give ourselves the time. We say, nope, I gotta have a stiff upper lip, I've gotta be stoic for other people, or nope, I don't have time, I've got this work to do, or no, that's a weakness, I won't show that. My sense of identity includes that I can never have these tears. Where our soul and our being and our emotional body wants to go in there, because there's actually a deep healing and an important part of being in heavy grief, of being in rage if your boundaries have been crossed. And when we don't let ourselves get there, that stops us up and blocks us up. And that is often more uncomfortable than actually being in the emotion. And sometimes we're blocked by fear. We can be so terrified of that experience, but it's that blocking that causes that emotion to keep cycling in on itself. It really can be like if you need to vomit because you're unwell and you just hold it down, but it just lasts so much longer because what your body's actually trying to do is purge it and get through it and get back into health. So allowing ourselves when those emotions come up to rest in them and kind of luxuriate in them, that moves them through much faster. And there is this sense of, yeah, like pleasure really isn't the right word, but like of I'm losing the word here, but it feels very right. And somewhere in, even when you are in that sorrow, it's like you're being held by the sense of you that says this is the way out. And that kind of Venus coming in and saying this has value, this is important for your relationships to yourself, your relationships to others, to be and allowed in these spaces of intense emotion. And so this is one thing for yourself to hold yourself in there, since Venus is interpersonal and relating to others and lovers and friends and that way as well. Being able to give that space to someone else who is going through an emotion or is stuck and wanting to, but isn't sure if they feel safe to do so. Again, consent is important too. This isn't just like we don't want to spew the words of our trauma or our emotions on people without consent. In order for us to feel safe and them to feel safe, it's really helpful to give a heads up or ask permission or just let people know this is what you're feeling, instead of running away and hiding because you feel shame over it, or just dumping it on people and making it their issue and then being, again, upset if they can't handle it or re-triggering them. It's all, we want to be in healthy community and healthy conversation. And because we just went through Libra season, and Libra season is all about balance and conversation and justice and negotiating our needs between us and another party, we've just kind of re-honed those skill sets for Scorpio season, where it's like, okay, we figured out our needs, we're trying to be in equal space, and now there's a lot more of me to be seen. Will you hold that with me? And if the answer is yes, then that's something that you can create together. So that's been Venus in Scorpio. But now that Venus is entering Sagittarius, November 15th, we've had that support, and now our value system is kind of moving from the in and the deep kind of emotional undercurrents of Scorpio season, and it's moving up and outward into and by into a light, I don't mean like, oh, because emotions are dark and bad, and so now we're moving up to a better space. Not like that. Sagittarius is very interested in the big picture and the truth, and expanding up into, okay, let's go beyond just this experience of being me. Let's go beyond this experience of darkness and heaviness. And now that we've brought it through, we've purged it out, we've brought it to the light, what has that revealed to us? What does going through this Scorpio journey of bringing all of that that's been repressed out, what does that reveal to us and teach us about ourselves, about each other? How does that help reveal the greater truth? That's Sagittarius, is about truth. So Venus entering Sagittarius, valuing the truth and valuing the full picture and how everything is connected to each other. Sagittarius is as it correlates with Jupiter, so that expansion and that seeing faraway places and seeing how the far away connects to the here and now, and how it's really all just one big kind of complex organism of truth where things are all related to each other. Venus is going to be really valuing that, valuing honesty, valuing learning in a higher philosophical sense, thinking about our belief system. Sagittarius is very much about our beliefs, which is kind of like that which we know, but we're going beyond that which we know in order to make those connections of the huge way that the truth and our lives interact. We don't get all of those, doesn't come to us by facts. Some of that we do have to step into the realm of belief because we don't know yet. Belief can be like this space holder of where we don't yet know how the truth interrelates. And so sometimes we create stories, we create myths, we create religions, which is this space holder of there's something that's true that we just don't know it yet. It's like those empty spaces in the periodic table of elements. It's like we believe that there's something there. There's a space for it. It should be there, but we're not really there yet. And we have to believe that we will discover it one day. So that's that Sagittarius theme. So really a great time. And because again, Venus is values, but also relationships, is really honesty. Honesty in your relationships, honesty in your conversations, honesty with yourself. That's just going to speed along this process of kind of figuring out the bigger truth, and Venus is really going to love that. So that was November 15th. One last major transit before the end of Scorpio season, and that is Mercury following Venus into Sagittarius November 17th. So again, kind of a lot of what we just said, but now we're thinking about it in the cognitive realm. So now we're thinking about truth, but we're also speaking truth. So Venus has been like, oh, there's a lot more value on truth in this expansion. And Mercury's like, on it. Let's talk about it. Let's learn about it. Let's be communicating about it. How can we learn and talk about and bring into our cognitive awareness this possibility of truth, these belief systems of trying to connect it all together. Sagittarius also likes kind of foreign travel and foreign adventure, and going to those faraway realms and because you go to a faraway place, you experience a new way of being, a new way of seeing, new cultures, new ways that things are done, which then translates into changing your belief system, and you're learning something new through experience of how other people live. So Mercury is very interested in talking about how other people do things and learning about different experiences that can be had other than how you're kind of innate or where you've been brought up. So so Mercury will be in Sagittarius November 17th. So that's kind of it for the main planetary transits. I will just touch on the dates for the new and full moons. This season, Scorpio season, because we haven't really talked about lunar nodes on any of these workshops very much, so I'm not going to touch on it too much today. But the lunar nodes is part of what dictates where and when we have solar and lunar eclipses. So when the nodes are in a certain sign, that means that the solar and lunar eclipses that we have a couple times each year are going to be in that sign. So the lunar nodes are currently in Taurus and Scorpio, which means Scorpio season is where we have our eclipses. So our new moon is a solar eclipse, because remember, a solar eclipse is when the moon comes over the sun and blocks it, and when the sun and the moon are together, that's a new moon. So that'll be a solar eclipse on October 25th. So that solar eclipse is going to be in Scorpio. There's a new moon in Scorpio creating a solar eclipse October 25th. And then 2 weeks later, when we come around again and we have the moon and the sun are now opposite each other, which is the full moon, that's the lunar eclipse, and that's in Taurus, and that's going to be November the 8th. I don't do a lot of lunar astrology in this particular workshop, and so I'm not going to touch on what those eclipses might mean for this particular video, but there are, I'll see if I can find a couple and link them in the comments below if you're interested in more working with eclipse astrology, but that's not what I'm going to cover in this particular workshop, okay? But be aware, eclipses in general are very intense energies, and with Scorpio being all about intensity, there's the potential for those 2-week window between October 25th and November 8th to have a lot of that heightened energy. But I also don't like to speak into that in like a scare tactic kind of way. A lot of people talk about intensity in this like, oh my God, you're going to have to buckle up. It's going to be crazy. This full moon's going to rock your world. And that kind of just sets you like on this agitation of like, oh, expecting bad things to happen to you. The same way that some people talk about retrogrades is like, oh, everything's going to mess up, everything's going to break. That's not necessary. It depends on how you receive the energy, how regulated you are. So I'm going to suggest that 2-week period between October 25th and November 8th, you really focus on your regulation, your emotional regulation, awareness of trauma coming up and how that might feel in your body. But I'm not going to suggest that you freak out about it, because that becomes its self-fulfilling prophecy. So just be aware of those dates, focus on regulation, have a little extra compassion for yourself and others. And if you do want to learn more about those eclipses, then there's other places you can go for that. Okay, so those are the new and full moon, and that finishes the astrology for today. So we're going to pull a single card. This workshop's probably going to be a little long because I like Scorpio season and I can't stop talking about it. So I'm just going to shuffle here, and we're going to pull one card when it presents itself, to give just a little bit of extra guidance on this particular season. No, not that one. And we're just going to see how long it takes to come out. Could have been shuffling this whole time, but no. We'll just shuffle and hope for a card. So maybe this is a great time to talk about the fact that I am a settler living in Canada, living in on Lekwungen speaking territory of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations, specifically the Esquimalt nations, and they were here long before me, and I'm a beneficiary. I have benefited from colonialism in the way that in colonialism that has taken away from those people. So that's part of my awareness and part of my spiritual practice here living on this land, is to be aware of that and to take steps forward in truth and reconciliation. On that note, if you're interested, it's no longer quite as relevant, but my Libra season workshop was donation based to the Native Women's Association of Canada. So all donations for, instead of donating to me for that workshop, the link was to the Native Women's Association of Canada. This workshop is back to being a regular pay what you can to me, but it's never wrong to also donate to important Indigenous institutions. So if you just want to go back, refresh on the Libra season workshop, give a little donation there, that would be lovely. Otherwise, today's workshop is pay what you can to me. So thank you very much for that donation support. It helps me keep making content. And I have a card ready for you. So the card for Scorpio season is the Knight of Coins. Lovely red colors. So we have this knight, and he's on his white horse, kind of walking forward. This big kind of barren landscape behind him, this explosive sun kind of blowing out there. And then we have this, he's carrying this big kind of red flag. So this is the Knight of Coins. We're going to see what it has to say for us. Okay, Knight of Coins. Sowing and reaping. The card shows a person who has found his proverbial place in the sun. This is all about your ability to organize your life, to turn insights into practical solutions instead of sweeping problems under the carpet. Well, that's really a satisfying card for the season. There is much to be harvested in your life. The huge billowing red flag symbolizes the tremendous strength and almost unlimited power of a person who has found their way back to the sun, to the fire and the source of life. By understanding your purpose and your needs, you will ensure a bountiful harvest. But you should pay attention to the fact that this card is the only one of the coin suit that does not show a coin. We see only 5 quite large red spots on a shining white area in the sky. This could be interpreted negatively. Your talent falls to pieces for lack of a connecting circle or framework. The whole dissolves into its parts because you focus too much on details. In a positive sense, the same symbol could be interpreted as a kind of explosion. If you truly have become yourself and found your place in the world and with God, no borders will be able to contain or limit you. It is actually the small things, the seemingly insignificant, that take on special significance. By exploring your current contradictions, you will gain experience and develop a deep sense of tranquility. Do not be afraid of conflicts. On the contrary, seek them out at the right time. Strengthen your faith in your ability to solve problems, to conquer fears, and to fulfill your desires. Practical advice: forgive yourself and others for not being perfect. Even the garbage that we all produce can still be used as manure and humus. You cannot change your fellow human beings, but you can accept them as they are and help them to use their talents to the greatest effect. Okay, so this card already started right off the bat, which is sweeping things under the carpet is not a long-term solution. And this is the season where things are coming back out from under the carpet. So the Knight of Coins, coins as a suit, is all about our talents and our resources. So it's about our tangible resources, but also our skills and the skills that we use in order to create and manifest more wealth or resources or whatever that might be. So our abilities and our skills to turn problems into solutions rather than sweeping them under the carpet. So anytime we have this option, when we come to this crossroads in experience of, do I deal with this? Do I create with this? Do I metabolize this? Or do I shove it down? Do I ignore it? Do I push it away? Do I say I can't deal with it? We have this moment to pause, and developing our skills or connecting and understanding what our skill sets are, or even our community skill sets, what our friends are able to do in that moment of pause, and say, how can we use our skill sets and our ability to transmute this, to experience it, instead of sweeping it under the carpet, causing trauma, repressing, and not dealing with it? Can we do it? There is a time and a place for putting something on the shelf and saying, I do not have the resources to deal with this. Sometimes we are totally overwhelmed. Often a lot of our trauma, especially as young people, was this trauma and experience is too big for me as a developing person. I can't deal with it right now. I am putting it away. But the goal is to put it away until you are better resourced and able to deal with it, instead of shoving it away forever. So it's okay to put things on pause when you really are overwhelmed, but you have to remember to come back, to get what's under the carpet out. Otherwise, eventually it'll build up and it'll blow out whether you want to or not. So this is suggesting to really focus on that coin energy, that earth energy, the skills and the abilities that we have to deal with things, to handle that which is intense. Either whether it's coming in and it's a current thing and we're managing to transmute and activate and actually deal with things as they come, so they never get swept on the carpet, or whether it's now I have the resources, now I know my skill sets, now I'm a bit more of an adult, or I have a safer community. Let's bring out the garbage we weren't able to deal with, and now we have the skills to work on it. And that is what this card is really suggesting. Let's get dirty. Let's get nitty and gritty and build something from this and use our talents. And you're not going to be able to use them if you don't know them, if you don't acknowledge them. So this is, if we understand our purpose and our needs, then you get this harvest, this idea of sowing and reaping. Now we get to reap what it is that our skills and our community is allowing us to turn that kind of dark, heavy garbage that we've repressed into something new, something that is positive, something that benefits. We do have this little bit of a warning of that kind of big explosion energy here, is like that volatility of Scorpio season is this could get explosive if we don't have the framework to contain it, but it also can be really excellent. And that energy, like explosion energy, is something that we harness, and combustion we harness in order to use that energy to warm us, to make things move. But that energy is also dangerous. So it's that whole, it's two sides of the same coin here. And Scorpio season is having us look at both of the extreme sides of the coin, and you can't avoid either. So in order to have that possibility of energy locomotion that combustion brings us, that also brings the risk of damage and harm that comes with it. So you got to accept both. If you want one, you have to have the other. And that's even exploring your current contradictions. It can feel like a contradiction. We just want happiness and good feelings all the time. I don't want to be this angry, repressed, and fearful and jealous person. That's not me. I want more of the good, and I don't want the bad. But they're part of the same. Their reactions are negative experiences, are reactions to stimuli and reactions to our needs being met or not met. And so we can't have one without the other. And trying to accept and trying to find what that dark heaviness is actually telling you, what the richness is of that, and be able to find it, that is the fuel for that kind of more pleasant experiences. But it's not because we're moving from what's bad into what's good. It's that both of them are part of that wave function. They interrelate with each other, and you can't get rid of one without the other. So, but that's getting a little bit more kind of like philosophical here. So we're just going to pull back from that. The last little bit here is talking about forgiveness. Forgive yourself and others for not being perfect. That one's hard. I know this. I want to be perfect. I could tell everybody else that they don't have to be perfect and then still get mad at them when they aren't, and expect myself to be perfect and get mad at myself when I'm not. No matter what I think I know, that perfectionism one is always something that comes up, because when people aren't perfect, it hurts. We have put expectations on people, and so that forgiveness of being able to recognize that forgiveness is often, it happens with both people. You forgive somebody else because, they may have harmed you or caused some sort of harm, but often that harm comes from you having put an expectation on them that they can't meet. So you also have to forgive yourself for having had that expectation that then backfired and hurt you. So forgiveness is often both needing to forgive yourself and the other person that's involved in a scenario. Scorpio season is, again, Scorpio is that fixed emotion. So often Scorpio has a really hard time forgiving, a really hard time moving on, because it just feels so lodged in there. So it's certainly not an easy path. It's an ongoing process, and it can just be little bits at a time. You sweep some out, it's really rough, and you try to forgive, you try to move on, and maybe next year comes up again, and you're like, oh, it's not as hard this time. And sometimes forgiveness, it's not just a decision that you turn on and then you're good, and it never hurts again. It's a practice. It's an ongoing thing of not having so much charge, so much emotional or bitterness charge to that memory, to that person, and that can take years. So it's okay if you can't just turn on forgiveness, and so try not to gaslight yourself and try to be comfortable if that's a long ongoing process. Yeah, I think I will probably leave it at that because we're already at 45 minutes. And there's always so much to talk about, so many more levels of Scorpio season that I didn't even get into. Didn't even get into the. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it at that because otherwise I'll get really excited. So, Scorpio season. Best of luck to all of you. Again, this is a pay what you can workshop. So the link is down below in the description to do donations, which is very much appreciated. As well, in the next week or so, what month are we at? November tarot horoscopes are going to be up on YouTube as well. So those ones are totally free, so you can check them out and give a little like and share, a little comment, see, to help kind of boost the signal there, and because I like to hear what your experience is with them. So those will be up in November. The Libra or the October tarot horoscopes are already there up on YouTube. So check them all out. Can never have too much astrology. And it looks like my parrot did sleep all the way through it, so it's really, really nice. Very good for him. So thank you so much again for joining me for this Scorpio season, and best of luck riding all those waves.